African women sing their national anthem, watched by those rich white ladies in South Africa who try and soften the severities of the government's race laws. Who are these white women? And what is this society they try and make less harsh? This world of the city of gold, Johannesburg. Only in the winter dawn could you mistake Johannesburg for a black city, before the whites are about. Many of these Africans set out from their homes 15 miles away at 4 or 5 in the morning. They travel on rough, overcrowded trains we were not permitted to fill. To come to work, to be in Johannesburg, Africans need a permit. Without their permits or their passbooks, they can be arrested and detained at will. Johannesburg is a wealthy city, a masculine city. Its new roads testimony to civic pride and a society where nearly every white man owns a car. Johannesburg is booming. It is one of the richest cities in the Western world. The city lies at the heart of a great plain, a golden nugget in a wasteland. Beyond Johannesburg lie the flourishing mines and the troubling millions of Africans, but here the white minority have created a place most are proud of, as the mayor explained to me among the grandeurs of the town hall. He talked about the character of Johannesburg.
Well, the thrill of Johannesburg's character, if I can call it that, lies in its people. Johannesburg's people, shall I say, are progressive go-ahead optimists, the likes of which will be hard to find anywhere in the world. They're fantastic people, and the big thrill of this mayoral job is that you learn to know Johannesburg's people such as you've never known them before.
When the city is, as I take it, it's going to be an all-white city, do you think it will lose some of its character when the colored people move out eventually?
Oh, I don't think this can ever be an all-white city. I think the non-whites are as much an integral part of Johannesburg as the whites. I don't think there's ever been any serious forecast that this would become an all-white city.
But the last streets inhabited by the colored people will soon be demolished under the new government law insisting colored people live separately from white. They will have to move away from the city to places they have never known. They can come back into Johannesburg to work, but they must not live there. Development must be separate. That is apartheid. If they happen to be traders, that's their hard luck. Yet once in Johannesburg, it was possible for a few black and white people to mix, as the distinguished novelist Nadine Gordimer told me.
People often think of Johannesburg as a very brash, money-grubbing, rather unpleasant place. It has this reputation, and I suppose that is one side of it. But during the 50s and into the early 60s, it had really a rather unique character. South of the Sahara, never mind in South Africa. There was a kind of mixing across the colour line here that really didn't exist anywhere else. There was nothing of the sort of, I've invited a black man to dinner, aren't I brave aspect of it at all. And firm friendships were made across the colour line this way. As I say, it came really out of community of interest. It came because perhaps this is the only real city south of Cairo. And the Africans who came to town were born perhaps in Sapphire Town, were city people of several generations, worked as journalists or jazz musicians or whatever. And they were city people just as the white people were. So Johannesburg really had this character, and it was a kind of foreshadowing of what an integrated society might be and how much it could enrich both sides if it were allowed.
What became of all those Africans who were part of that life you're describing?
Well, I'm afraid Many of them, the ones who are involved in politics, are either in exile or in prison because their political movements are banned. And the intellectuals generally became stultified by the colour bar.
Soweto is where the black Africans must live, a township 15 miles from Johannesburg. Its population is now almost as great as the white cities. It's impossible to get permission to film life on this dark side of the moon. Many white South Africans are proud of Soweto. They contrast it not with white Johannesburg, but with more primitive African communities of the north. The African, they claim, is well educated. But education in Soweto seldom brings a job with a white man's status or wages. Slowly, though, as African wages begin to rise, so do their expectations. Storekeepers appreciate that more prosperous customers are good for business. At a large apartment store in Johannesburg, there were many black as well as white shoppers, but I could see no black shop assistants. Whether wages should be higher for Africans was a question I put to the managing director of the OK Bazaar, Stanley Cohen.
Yes, I definitely do, and I think they will go higher. It obviously must benefit us if they do, because they have to spend this money in the stores, and also helps them in their own standard of living and allows them to buy luxuries which they haven't been able to in the past. So we're all for it. In fact, we pioneered the increase in wages in our type of organization.
I noticed in your store here that no Africans are working at the counters. Is that because the whites refuse to work with them?
Yes, mainly. There is no reason why they can't work behind the counters, there's no law against it. But there is this natural prejudice in this country which you can't legislate for or against.
You don't think you can legislate?
I don't think you can legislate for it, but it takes a long time before that legislation is accepted. You've seen that in other parts of the world. Wages are much lower at the gold mines. The workers offer their daily greetings to the white bosses. Gold mining, uranium and copper is still the main source of Johannesburg's wealth. It employs 500,000 people. The wages of the Africans who go thousands of feet into the ground are 11 shillings a day. In mine disasters in South Africa, the casualties are almost invariably black. And the deeper down the mine you go, the fewer white faces. The Africans are migrants, brought in by the companies, usually on 9-month contracts, so they're separated from their families. This prevents new urban communities growing up near the white. But the African seldom sees the gold he produces. It's white men who handle it when it's separated from the dross. Gold, being precious, is a white man's metal. For white workers in the industry, wages are high, around $2,000 a year, and rents are cheap, often only £6 a month. White workers resist the promotion of Africans to skilled work. Gold bars have built the great mining and finance houses of Johannesburg. The famous businessmen of South Africa, the Menels and the Oppenheimers, have their headquarters here. Anglo-Val, Anglo-American and the rest have a capital of hundreds of millions of pounds. Nearly all the industrial barons are English-speaking. Many are Jewish. Usually they are hostile to Apartheid, call themselves liberal. Yet for all their wealth and protestations, the nationalist government and policy remain unchanged. Shares at the stock exchange change hands more readily than does power. As foreign investment grows, attracted by raw materials, a growing market and cheap labor, so the stock exchange grows. In this masculine white society, the preoccupation is money. And outside, the world money buys can be insulated from the turbulent continent. In the white suburbs of Johannesburg, life is never less than comfortable, sometimes spectacularly elegant. The average white income in Johannesburg may not enable you to live in quite this style, but it does enable you to lead quite an easy life. The very rich in South Africa live very much like the very rich elsewhere. They have an abundance of servants. What makes them different is a more acute uneasiness about the future. Will the servants always be servants? In the rich suburbs, the fear of robbery and worse reflects a more profound unease. Yet the enemy's brother is frequently a friend. Many women in Johannesburg grace their walls with the work of African painters. The artist may be in exile or jail, his work remains. It's in these suburbs that the few outspoken opponents of Prime Minister Vorster may still be heard, like the last Progressive Party MP, Mrs. Sussman.
What kind of people support you?
Well, I would say largely people of the upper middle class and the middle class, people who are enlightened, professional people, the educated people. The constituency I happen to represent consists largely of that type of person.
But in a sense, you're the kind of conscience of the rich here.
Well, I don't think only of the rich, you know, because we do have a wide cross-section of support in South Africa. It's not enormous in quantity, but we do have people from all walks of life supporting us, and people of both language groups, although largely we get support from the English-speaking group of South Africans.
Does it strike you as strange that here you have your constituents, rich, powerful industrialists, and yet they have so little influence over the government?
Yes, well, that's largely their own fault, I might say, because to a large extent the English-speaking group has opted out of politics in South Africa. They've left politics to the Afrikaans-speaking people, and therefore they play very little part so far in the political development of South Africa. There are no lobbies, for instance, of any real importance. I suppose the big mining houses would be naturally consulted on any change in mining law and so on, but certainly on the racial aspect they've got very little influence, because all of them would like complete development on the economic front without any regard to the labor situation racially, for instance. They'd like to use the skills of all the non-whites, which they're not able to do under present laws.
Is it fair to say that you have here a rich industrial community that says it's liberal against apartheid, which has helped to produce an illiberal society by their inactivity? That they are, in a sense, very rarely responsible?
Well, to some extent that is true, because people who do nothing are responsible, I believe, for situations that have been allowed to develop simply by their own inaction. But on the other hand, the fact that the country has been developed economically by these particular people means that the non-whites have been urbanized, they've been taught skills, and they have entered the economic field and have developed their own purchasing power, which is a very important factor today, and as I say, goes contrary to the political aims and goals of the government, which is, as you know, the goals are based on separate development, which I, for one, and my party certainly does not believe is in any way the alternative policy which can work. We think it's quite impossible.
It does look as if the industrialists and the rich are getting the benefits of being apparently liberal and opposed to apartheid, and yet having cheap labor at the same time.
Yes, I think that is fair comment. I think it is fair comment, and I see no reason why the industrialists, in fact, should not improve the living conditions of their workers. They should, of course, the government should set the lead. There should be a minimum wage, below which no employer should be permitted to employ labor. There are, of course, minimum wages for certain occupations, but not enough, and of course the Africans don't have the benefit of collective bargaining, which means their position is very weak vis-a-vis the other working groups in this country, coloureds, Indians and whites, and they always, it seems to me, seem to be the people who pay for keeping down costs of production and who are I think, jeopardized as a result of this, certainly by their standards of living being far too low.
Many of the people who run industry here in Johannesburg, while they'll talk to one in private, are very nervous, indeed will not talk in public. I mean, what exactly is it they're afraid of?
Well, of course, the government wields great power in this country today. It's the hander-outer of concessions and of permits and of import permits and so on. And people are nervous, you know. There's a tendency when the government is in such complete control as this one is. After all, it has a 2/3 majority in the lower house today. And it's very difficult for businessmen to run the risk of bucking the powers that be. I think they ought to, of course. I think they'd find it very beneficial, and I think they'd find the results quite surprisingly easier than they had thought.
It's women, too, who created the Black Sash movement, a small organization to defend the old South African constitution before the nationalist government began removing its guarantees of freedom. The Black Sash women are not allowed to express political opinions to visitors, or their movement will be banned.
film the boss and they're taking me with me there.
It's better. The boss will definitely give you a job. He wants to keep you.
Yes, I do a job. I don't stay without the civil.
All right.
What they can do is describe their work in helping Africans suffering at the hands of the police. They have more and more cases of Africans being endorsed out, that is, expelled from their homes because papers have been lost or are not in order.
Children, is this your only child?
Yes,
Have you got a birth certificate for her?
yes, I got. It's a boy.
It's a boy?
Yes.
Oh, goodness, sorry, I thought it was a girl. And his Christian name?
Jean Sinclair talked about the case she was dealing with.
The thing was that she was born in Port Elizabeth and came up here only in 1966 and is living with her husband in his parents' house. But she entered the area unlawfully in that she didn't get permission to enter the area, and she has no rights in Johannesburg, and she has been warned to leave within 72 hours. But having lost her reference book, as she was born in Port Elizabeth, they refused to give her another one in Johannesburg. So the first thing that we have to do is to try and get her a reference book. She has an appeal against her endorsement out, but I'm afraid she hasn't very much hope of being allowed to remain. She has this one baby who was born here last year. I think it's 6 months old. And he is lawfully in Johannesburg because he was born here, but his mother isn't.
So the husband and the baby can stay here, but
Yes.
she can't?
No. She's been endorsed out and told to go back to Port Elizabeth, or that's where she belongs. But she's also lost her right in Port Elizabeth because she's been away from there for more than a year, so that she has no rights anywhere now. When she goes to, if she comes from the prescribed area of Port Elizabeth, she will not be allowed to remain in Port Elizabeth.
Will she be then separated from her family?
Yes, I'm afraid so, but she will take the baby with her. I mean, I'm afraid the baby won't be able to stay here without its mother. So the baby will lose its rights in Johannesburg as well.
This polo club outside Johannesburg is one of the few working-class polo clubs in the world, as they like to say. Like all sport in South Africa, polo is segregated. The Africans have no chance of a chukka. English polo clubs have visited this ground recently. They would not have been able to play had they brought a Maharaja or two with them. Here, there is a very different view of society from that of Helen Sussman and Nadine Gordimer. Among other things women members told me was that the divorce rate in white Johannesburg was the highest outside California. Why?
Because the women have such an easy life. Very easy life. I mean, if they don't go out to business, they've got more time on their hands to get into more mischief, which you must admit is lots of fun. It all depends how you look at it.
And this then in turn leads to the divorce. I mean, people don't...
Oh, I think so. They have competitions, you know.
What do you mean by competitions?
Well, you know, how many husbands they can sort of go out with.
Yes. Collect.
I've
Yes.
got to be careful with my wording here.
What is it you like about life here?
I love the country I was born in. I like the way of life. We have an easy living. It's a healthy climate for children and for ourselves. And it's just, I love it.
But no problems?
Oh, I have my problems. Certainly I do.
You're saying, is life easy for women in general?
Yes, very. If you wish to make it so.
What makes it so easy?
Well, I think our husbands spoil us, the majority of women. And we grow up in an easy way. We never have to do anything for ourselves. This is talking in an average home, of course. You get the poorer home or you get immigrants and people that refuse to have servants. But if you grow up in an average home where you do your own work, you have servants to do your work. I mean, you're taught the basic things in housekeeping and to keep your bedroom tidy and so on. But if you feel like something being washed, it's given to the servant to wash. You never have, it's an easy life.
Well, once you've trained your servants, then they work for you and you don't have to do the work yourself. And I think most South Africans are very lazy. I'm one.
I second that too. You go out to work, you come home, and everything's ready for you. You get up in the morning, you don't have to do a thing. But as Cynthia says, you have to train your servants, and that is quite a business to train them.
The pointed thing here is that the easy life is on the white side of the colour bar, and the hard life, with very few exceptions, is on the dark side. And if coloured or African people do, by some good fortune, become money and become wealthy, there's a great limit on what they can do with their wealth. They can't move to a beautiful part of town just because they like the view there. They have to continue to live in a segregated suburb. They really haven't any choice in this matter at all. And every white person who becomes moneyed automatically expects to be able to live where he chooses and as he pleases. The same thing with other pleasures. To go and stay in a decent hotel, to go to cinemas and shows. It doesn't matter how much money you have. If you're coloured, you simply can't enjoy any of these pleasures.
Do you feel guilty at all yourself about having an easy life?
Yes, I do. And I think all white people, all liberal-minded white people, have this sense of guilt. And we deal with it, I suppose, sometimes in laughable ways. We come to terms with this guilt in one way or another. And then one realizes that the way you deal with it as an individual may be meaningful for you, but it hasn't much to do with the total social situation. You don't change it.
In Soweto, African women, some of them grandmothers, train to be youth club leaders.
You do the hokey and you turn yourself around. That's what it's all about. Oh, put your right hand in, put your right hand out, put your right hand in and shake it all around. You do the hokey and you turn yourself around. That's what it's all about.
They are encouraged and financed by white women. It's the women who are trying to help.
It's curious that women in South Africa seem to be generally more liberal-minded or progressive-minded than men. Well, perhaps one should qualify that and say English-speaking white women. And I wonder whether, again, this isn't regarded as a kind of woman's thing, that women can afford to be softer, more charitable, and generally regarded, you know, as the more compassionate sex, whether it isn't looked at from this point of view as a compassionate movement rather than something that is seeking for justice.
Help of the helpless, sing the nursery school children of Soweto, abide with me. Whether the consolations of white charity or religion temper the effects of apartheid is not yet a question that touches these children. It soon will. Some of them, perhaps even sooner, will be moved out of town to a place they've never known. Some may be lucky, some may be political and unlucky. None, if the present laws remain unchanged, will be treated as the equal of the white man in Johannesburg. Whatever the good women of Johannesburg may think, life is satisfactory for the great majority of the white people who live there. The majority have a strong view of visitors who criticize their country's racial policies.
These people obviously haven't had to work with the Africans in this country. I help to run a dairy where I employ between 70 and 80 of these boys. I have mostly to do with the delivery boys, the milk service. And I feel if you treat them well, they do give you a certain amount back. But they are very difficult people to deal with. And such as if you gave them a good hiding, they appreciate it more than if you gave them a big bowl of food for their children. They feel that that is straight talking.
Do you think they have a very hard life?
In cases I do. Certain cases I feel that they do. Such as their facilities aren't always what I feel they could be. But they always revert back to their old ways. They don't appreciate what you try and improve for them.
Do you think the servants or the Africans get a fair deal?
I'm quite sure they do. I do think so.
Do you think so?
Oh, yes, because I think without the European paying them and looking after them and housing them, they'd go one way, they'd starve on the farms out in the rural areas. When they come home from their leave, and they're paid while they're on their leave, they come back and they're only too happy to be back again to get 3 square meals a day and a decent bed to sleep in.
But do you think that they like you?
Oh, that's a tricky question. It all depends. I mean, if you have a servant that you've trained that doesn't like you, well, you just get rid of her and start again.
I would like to see an integrated society where colour prejudice and racial prejudice has no place at all. And that perhaps is the ultimate reason why I stay here, that I hope one day to live in that sort of society here.